And in this corner, nerds!
And I'm going to talk about me, myself, and my problems here for a little while.
The Rule 34 questions were last week.
That's not a puzzle, it's pushing blocks.
I will accept confidently sounded episode numbers and issue numbers as actual evidence.
But I want to hear about your other shitty characters.
Of course, invest in a robotic Flavor Flav.
This is the Debate This podcast.
Welcome to the Debate This podcast, a show where no one is right, but someone is definitely wrong. In this podcast, we take time out of our busy adult lives to argue over things of great importance, like comics, video games, and which Batman was the best Batman. My name is Todd Thomas, and today we have a topic of great importance, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Specifically, today Kyle Gasman Harper and Andrew Kingfisher 9000 Henderson will be debating Ocarina of Time and if it truly can hold the title of the crown jewel of the Zelda universe. With that, I want to hear some opening statements, so let's go ahead and throw it to Kyle Gasman Harper to tell me some of the pros of this N64 gem.
Thanks, Todd. So, all you need to know about Ocarina of Time and why it stands as the best Legend of Zelda game so far is that every Legend of Zelda game since Ocarina of Time, 20 years, has tried to do what Ocarina of Time has done. And each game has improved on one aspect of it, maybe, but not all the aspects. No game blends everything about Legend of Zelda into one perfect game quite like Ocarina of Time. It was a trailblazer in its genre. It forged the path for 3D adventure games since then. And you can see its influence still today in series like Uncharted, The Elder Scrolls, Fallout, BioShock. All draw from what Ocarina of Time has laid out, and no game has done it better.
Well, thank you for those points, Gasman. I have played 2/5 or so of some of those games you listed, and I enjoyed them. I'm inclined to believe your opening statements. Let's hear it from Andrew Kingfisher 9000. Why is Kyle wrong?
First of all, I would like to just open the floor right now, and let's talk about that fucking deep cut, that Rugrats deep cut.
Grandpa is yelling right now or chanting.
Yeah, for those of you playing at home, Todd is referencing a rogue episode of the Nickelodeon cartoon Rugrats, where Grandpa goes apeshit over a fishing rod. So well done.
Hey, I do what I can for the people.
Look, it's undeniable Ocarina of Time was influential. Of course, it was a masterpiece of its time. But it just kind of plays like ass right now. When you look at it today, it's just kind of boring. It's just really outdated. Doesn't hold up, and it doesn't hold up in the same way that I don't think Mario 64 holds up. Again, masterpieces, but that whole era is just so rough to go back to. The blocky textures, the muddy settings. You can't distinguish from what's interactive versus non-interactive. Yeah, it's tough. Furthermore, Ocarina of Time did a lot of things right, but did a lot of things wrong. And Zelda kept doing those things for years on years on years.
Well, I appreciate some of those points. And to add on to what you started with, in case you're curious, that episode was titled Beauty Contest. And that was episode 5A, so we can all pour one out for Klasky Supo, assuming that, he was the one that numbered it. I don't know. That's me trying to panic on how to pronounce the last name CSUPO. So, you've kind of talked a little bit about some of the pros and the cons in an opening. How about some evidence? You said a lot of pretty words to make me think good. What else you got?
All right. So, what keeps Ocarina of Time standing the test of time? What keeps it as a great game today? Is its iconic game design and its its introduction of the open world. No game before Ocarina of Time had such a big map to explore. When you step out of Kuriko Village the first time and just have that open field, you can go anywhere in the game, and there's no load screens, no buffering, nothing hidden behind a door. It's magic, and it still holds true today. I've played Ocarina of Time within the last year, and when you step off that path into the open field, it just hits you, and it's amazing. And it, like I said, played it recently, still holds up. The other thing that Ocarina of Time does that makes it stand the test of time is it has introduced concepts that still are seeded throughout current Legend of Zelda games. It's got the lock-on targeting. It does it introduced the time travel concept that has been so important to Legend of Zelda since. It's got the music as a core part of the gameplay with the ocarina. How many games have tried to have something as cool as the Ocarina of Time in it? The Wind Waker, please.
You didn't like that conducting weird thing?
I'm feeling a lot of fire on this end.
This went from just Kyle being passionate about something to the gas man bringing the heat against anything that's not Ocarina.
I'm bringing it. Every other games have tried to do what Ocarina of Time has done, and they all feel smaller in comparison, which is interesting because some pretty big games comparatively have come out in the series. The other thing that Ocarina of Time doesn't do in this case, that's been lost in some of the more recent Legend of Zelda games, is it doesn't hold your hand. There are no rails in Ocarina of Time. They lock you out of zones and don't let you go into more than you can handle. But the dungeons are hard, and they can be punishing. We all know the legendary or infamous even water temple, that if you do it out of order, you can lock yourself out of your game and can't play it anymore. That's frustrating, yes, but part of what leads to the legend of Ocarina of Time. No game has quite encapsulated rage quit like getting trapped in the water temple.
Well, Gasman, I'm gonna stop you right there. I've played 3.5 Zelda games, and I was enjoying some of your pro pieces, but then you brought up the water temple, and now all I'm seeing is red. So I wanna take that fire and anger and pass it off to Kingfisher 9000 over here to see if he can help poke some holes into what you're saying.
Yeah, totally. I mentioned this earlier. It's just the game today. When you look at it by today's standards, and you look at it, obviously it looks like ass because it's 20 years old. Okay, that's fine. I'll give it a pass. It just plays very clunky. And again, I absolutely concede that it has. There's so many current games show threads. I mean, it basically created the 3D action adventure genre. Outside of Tomb Raider, which actually created it, but we'll blow past that. But obviously, it established a lot of things, but it didn't perfect any of those things. It established it, and I think that's where we need to make a clear difference. Is just because it did it first doesn't necessarily mean it did it best, and it didn't do it best even compared to most of the games in the series. Again, it just established those things. So on. More and specifically the things that you actually do in the game, there are so many boring and repetitive tasks and just needless design choices in the game, just because they were, they had a lot of limitations and they didn't know how to explore the space. I'm sorry, but pushing blocks is not fun. It's not. It looks cool, I'm sure, and it looked really cool in 1998. But pushing blocks is pressing up. It's just not fun or
I think
compelling.
you push blocks in every Legend of Zelda game, though. I don't know if
And-
that
yep.
if
Nope,
you don't
you
like pushing
absolutely do.
blocks, I don't think you like Legend of Zelda.
You absolutely do, and I will agree with you that in Link to the Past, there's a fuck ton of block pushing in there as well.
That was one of the 3.5 games I played.
Yeah, exactly. Legend of Zelda, the block pusher. But compared to a lot of the later games, Wind Waker and all that, they do that, but those are typically reserved for early dungeons where they're like kind of trying to hold your hand, where you don't have to do a lot of problem solving. But I mean, Ocarina, you're still pushing blocks by the Shadow Temple. It's like, come on. The other thing is, they were exploring 3D space, but in order to do that, they confused problem solving with finding a target in outside of the known area. When you look at Link to the Past, it's really easy to see a target above a door because it's right there. But they decided as a design choice, well, we're going to have the player look for a target to shoot, which is, again, it's interesting for its time, but after 3 or 4 times, it just becomes really stale, and I think it becomes incredibly more boring on repeat playthroughs. And first and foremost, or finally rather, the Zelda formula. So again, Ocarina of Time established the Zelda formula. It's the find the item, go through the dungeon, whack the boss 3 times to stun it with that item, and then you're done. And they've basically done that in the last, every game for the last 20 years up until Breath of the Wild. And thank God Breath of the Wild broke that pattern, because holy cow, this was just getting really, really stale.
Well, so you've had some pros, poked some cons, and I'm here on the fence. I'm trying to think, why? Like, why should this be a game that shines above all other Zelda games? And so, Kyle, you said you just recently played it through lately. So, what are maybe some of the things that jumped right back out to you in this recent playthrough? Like, what are the things that you were like, oh man, older, wiser, stronger, faster, better Gas Man appreciates these aspects more than a younger, more naive, unbearded Gas Man? Let's hear it, Gas Man.
Unbearded Gas Man is an awesome name for a prog rock band.
That was my ska band in junior high.
So what really stood out to me that held up on my replay of Ocarina of Time was how intricate the dungeons are. Yes, you're pushing blocks, but you push blocks in every Legend of Zelda game. It's a puzzle game. That's
not a puzzle. It's pushing blocks.
I mean, you can both be right in this moment, in this space.
No.
In this very, very niche argument about is pushing blocks puzzles, the answer is yes.
But the other thing that stood out to me is, like, every other Legend of Zelda game has aped Ocarina of Time, but none of them do all the things Ocarina of Time included. Wind Waker's got the bigger open map, but it's all water, and you have to sail everywhere in Wind Waker. You said you've got repetitive tasks in Ocarina of Time. Why don't you tell me about collecting the berries in Twilight Princess? Because that is some repetitive ass bullshit.
Yeah, no, I mean, that sucks. You're absolutely right. That does suck. God, there's a lot of shitty things in Zelda games. Why do we play?
That's actually what the third act in this podcast is going to be, just us shitting on Zelda mechanics. So stay tuned.
Oh man, everything we know is a lie.
The controls aren't tight. Talk to me after you played Skyward Sword and get tired of swinging your Wiimote in the right direction, having your Wii misread it, and you have to unlodge your Wiimote from the wall because you've thrown it for the 800th time. Ocarina of Time is tight. It's not the longest game. It's not the most up-to-date game, but it is the tightest Zelda game. And it's got all the things we associate with Legend of Zelda. It's got, like, it's Ganondorf was Ganon before this, and he's been Ganondorf, and everyone knows him as Ganondorf. He's Ganondorf because of this game. It introduced the goddesses and them granting powers
I'm
to
gonna
Link.
push my glasses up. Actually, the goddesses were in fact in Link to the Past.
I'm sorry. I'll rescind that. Todd, strike that from the record.
Nope, it is a permanent record. That's points.
Okay.
I've got a tally up here right now.
Like I said before, the concept of music as part of the gameplay is still very important to the Legend of Zelda series, and no other game has done it quite as well. The music from this game is the most iconic Legend of Zelda music, except for maybe the original overworld theme, but everything else has come from Legend of Zelda. Ocarina of Time is Legend of Zelda. If you don't like Ocarina of Time, I'm sorry, I don't think you like Legend of Zelda.
See, so this is where I think this is the big point of contention, right? Because you've got people. Was that your first game, Kyle?
Actually,
OT?
it wasn't. My first game was Wind Waker, because I didn't have an N64.
That's interesting.
I started with PlayStation.
Gotcha. So I think that's really interesting that you say that, because I mean, Ocarina of Time was my first game as well, and that's what I feel like I thought that for a long time. Then I played Link to the Past, and I was like, oh, this is in here. Like Zelda's Lullaby is in Link to the Past. Kakariko Village is in Link to the Past, and Ocarina of Time. When you look at those two games together, it really is like more or less a 3D version of a Link to the Past with a more linear narrative. With a little more railroading, I think. But I am interested in what you said about like if you don't like Ocarina of Time, you don't like Zelda, because I think there are two very distinct ideas of what those games are. Because you've got go back all the way back to 87, I think that was 87, when the original OG Legend of Zelda came out. It wasn't about any of that. I mean, there was barely any story. There were barely any, it was all about exploration, and Miyamoto, I mean, it's cliched at this point, but like Miyamoto said that he was inspired by exploring caves and the woods when he was a child, and it's all about just you just go, and that's what resonated so much with people with Breath of the Wild, and I think that's why it was such a important change to the quote unquote formula, is because it brought us back to that original idea of like you have zero direction, just go and explore, and I think my problem with Ocarina of Time is you said it gives you the impression of having an open world, but when you put it on paper, it's as it's as streamlined or as railroaded as Final Fantasy 13, and people give that shit all the time. But I mean, you have to do the forest first. You have to go to Hyrule Castle. You have to go to the mountain to meet the Gorons. You have to. I mean, there's the only thing you can't do in order is the difference between going to the Shadow Temple and the Spirit Temple. So I mean, it sounds like an open world because you can technically go anywhere, but everything is gated. So you have to go in one particular direction.
I want to say, for the record, I played this game and I'm just now realizing that those two temples you named are different temples. I think that young, round Todd in 6th grade would have argued on point against me, but I think I was convinced those were two of the same temples. So I guess, in looking for any more supporting evidence as to why or why not, is there anything else you think? Because I'm looking to cast my deep judgment on what I think is the best Legend of Zelda game when this conversation is done, and I'm looking for any other supporting evidence, and if there's not anything sitting out there, then I want to hear, some closing statements, because I need to do some deliberation.
I've got one more thing to say. I think that it started a lot of things, but and this is, as consumers, we should want our games to constantly improve. And I think, again, I agree that it started a lot of good things, but there are other games that just improved on the formula. Majora's Mask is literally I mean, it's the same game. It's all the same engine, same assets, but the story I think is a lot more compelling. And it actually is. It's not the best, but it is actually my favorite. Twilight Princess, they tweaked the combat. Wind Waker, I like the style. I think that was an interesting choice in injecting style in our games. But I will say, and Kyle, I don't know if you've ever played this, but did you ever play Link Between Worlds, the 3DS one?
Yeah.
That actually is my favorite of the series. I think that's the best one. I have a connection to Majora's Mask, but I think that's the best one that they've ever made because it goes back to that original, like, you just get all the items right away and you just fucking go. And I love that. And maybe it's just my school of thought versus your school of thought, and none of us are right and none of us are wrong, but that's the point of the show, is that everyone's wrong.
No, everyone is wrong, and some people are just less wrong, I think, is what we're looking for here.
The thing that I'll make my closing statements in a minute, but the thing that I liked a lot of A Link Between Worlds, the thing that really turned me off was the weapon rental system. Part of what I like about Legend of Zelda is that, like, ever expanding, like, toolbox you get of items. I didn't like having to trade in my weapons between dungeons, and I really didn't like having to trudge all the way back to my house.
Yeah, but you said that you wanted a challenge. That's your challenge. Like, it's like Dark Souls, baby. You lose your stuff.
That's
you lose your stuff, and
challenging.
Did you just try and push up a game by saying it's Dark Souls? Like,
yeah.
that was your compliment to a game.
You can quote me as saying A Link Between Worlds is the Dark Souls of Legend of Zelda.
That to me is as tedious as purging the ocean in Wind Waker for all of those shards of the
God,
Triforce.
how awful! Real talk though, how awful is that?
That brings up more anger inside me than any joke about the water temple, because, like, I didn't have any issues with the water temple.
So let's talk about the water temple, because the water temple, like, look, I don't think the water temple is difficult. The water temple is poorly designed. So let's not confuse the two. Like, it's difficult because it doesn't make any fucking sense. It's a maze that the exit's constantly moving.
People like to shit on the water temple because they think it's hard, or they think it's terrible, or whatever, and I get it. Like, if you somehow really, like, Jeff up the key system, like, you know what? You deserve to have your game frozen. Like, you've learned a lesson, and if you hadn't learned that lesson, like, if you had not gone through that, you wouldn't have learned. But if we're gonna, like, shit on the water temple, let's at least talk about really bad underwater levels, i.e. the Nintendo Ninja Turtles game that was impossible to beat underwater.
Nintendo doesn't know Nintendo hates underwater. I don't know why. Yeah. I don't know why we still have to be underwater. Like,
no, it's fine.
Chemical Plant Zone sucks. Like, every World 1-3 sucks. Like, every water stop doing water. I'll tell you what though, I think is the worst one is the Fire Temple. I think the Fire Temple sucks.
You aren't down with the Bolero of fire?
I mean, I love a Spanish dance as much as the next person. But I think is it Bolero or Bolero?
No, what'd you say?
Who cares?
I said the right one.
You know what I hear, Andrew, when you complain about these? You're weak. I hear weakness from you.
Are you telling me to get good?
I'm telling you to get good.
Right.
All right.
So no, not yet.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So I gotta defend myself. You're telling me to get good. You're just complaining about they died in Link to Between Worlds. I gotta give my boomerang back. I'm like, no, fuck you, Kyle. That's a challenge. That's not a time tax. It's a challenge.
It's not challenging to trudge across the map and go to my house and pay 500 rupees for the item I already have. It's annoying.
But did you learn something in that journey?
Yeah, I learned I hate it, and I just want to keep my items.
Maybe what you've learned is you have to be better at 2D Legend of Zelda.
I think what you missed, Kyle, is that the items were inside of you the whole time.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so I'm getting a lot of ammo here to decide whether this is indeed the crown jewel of the Zelda franchise. I want to hear some final closing statements. I will go ahead and yield over to Kyle Gasman Harper. Let's hear your closing statement as to why this is indeed the flagship, key entry in the Zelda franchise.
So to drive my point home, I want to reference a television show, a sitcom, the most watched sitcom in history.
Big Bang Theory.
Did
done
Big
here.
Bang Theory have more people? Is that more watched than
If there's still a god, it didn't.
Seinfeld is it's like the end all be all of sitcoms. It's the show about nothing. It's been the formula has been since beaten to death, but it still stands the test of time. There have been shows since then. Friends was Seinfeld with hot people, and Big Bang Theory is Seinfeld with nerds, and
Seinfeld was Cheers with dick bags.
and Always Sunny is Seinfeld with more yelling,
Even
and
bigger
Danny
dick
DeVito.
With no moral shades of gray.
You show Seinfeld to someone who's never seen it, and they won't think it's funny because they've seen all the jokes before. And I think that's what's happening to Ocarina of Time is, you get that better open world with Wind Waker, and you get and Breath of the Wild, and you get the challenge, I guess, from Link Between Worlds, trudging to and from your house, but it's all there in Ocarina of Time. Every little piece of Legend of Zelda lore that you love from other games is in Ocarina of Time. It's all in one package. You don't have to play 5 20-hour-long games to get it all. It's all right there. And at the end of the day, for my money, I don't have much time. I'd rather play one game than 5. So that's really what I'm gonna hang my hat on, is everything that Legend of Zelda was, and will be is there in Ocarina of Time. And you gotta get good.
Kingfisher 9000, your thoughts?
I hate that you use that against me. If we're gonna use the sitcom comparison, I would more compare it to Friends, in that yes, it was absolutely a masterpiece of its time, incredibly influential, spawned thousands and thousands of iterations. But if you watch Friends today and Joey says something a little sexist, or Chandler says like, "Oh, isn't that kind of gay?" and you're like, "Ugh, that's unfortunate." It's just it's a sign of the time, man. It was a different time.
Let's not make the implication that Ocarina of Time is like weirdly hateful by today's standards. It's just an older game.
It's the Chandler of video games. Exactly. It's just an older game. And that's my point, is that it was great at the time, but we should, as gamers and as consumers, we should look for evolution in our media. And I think that the fact that we got Breath of the Wild is amazing, and potentially, if Nintendo had actually listened to its fans, it would just crap out a new copy, Ocarina of Time 3, Ocarina of Time 4, which is basically what Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, where they were just clones with better graphics and just telling the same story. And that's why those games aren't awesome either. That's my point. If you want the quintessential Zelda experience, I think if you want one game, I think that's Link to the Past, because that's really where it all started. But if you want the actual Zelda experience, I think honestly Breath of the Wild, or even the OG Legend of Zelda, because it's going back to that idea of exploration before all this narrative and all this like fantastical story got injected to it. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that it's not the best thing.
We should expect our games to evolve, and you think the best way to experience that is playing the first game in the series.
No, I'm just saying if you want the fair enough. If you want the Legend of Zelda experience, I think you need to look at what is your Legend of Zelda experience? Because to me, it's the idea of exploration. It's the idea of being in the middle of nowhere and saying, "Okay, go." So to me, that's OG Legend of Zelda, or maybe Breath of the Wild. But if your idea is more, if you want more of a linear narrative approach, then Link to the Past, maybe Ocarina of Time if you hate yourself. Um, but look, like maybe I don't know shit because we're on the 6th version of a Transformers movie now, so maybe I've got it all wrong. Maybe you just have to follow the money. I don't fucking know.
So I've got some things to think about, and before I render my verdict as to which one of you I think is the wronger one of you, let's share some love in here. I think that as far as it goes for Kingfisher's position, I want to hear some love for Ocarina and the good that it did, and as far as it goes for Kyle Gasman Harper, I want to hear you shit on Ocarina and give some love to some other Zelda franchise games here.
Who do you want first?
Yeah, I want to hear you shit on what you love first.
Yay!
Because it brings me great joy.
So I will concede.
Make eye contact with me while you do it.
Gross.
I will concede that that the open world has been more open in other Legend of Zelda games. The Breath of the Wild is fantastic. When you step out of that cave and like the sun, like I felt the sun hit my face, is how incredible that like.
I cried.
It was like that was incredible, and like I said, I started with Wind Waker, and I will defend Wind Waker until the day I die. Yes, it's a lot of ocean, but it is a true open world experience, and it's got pirates and a talking lion's head ship, and the cell shading is amazing to me. And I'll give you Link to the Past is an incredible game, but it is tied to 2D, and that has some, you're not going to win everyone over with a 2D game in this 3D world we're living in. So I think you're right though. Link to the Past has the deepest story of any Legend of Zelda game.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Ocarina of Time, it's a masterpiece. I've never not said that. When I got it, I mean, my mind was blown. Like I said, it was the first Zelda game I ever played. So for a long time, that was the cornerstone for me. I think I replayed it like 4 times, probably more than any other game, which is that's fun. As much as I don't love things like the Fire Temple, I get why it happened. It was just a lot of like exploring the space. I think the Spirit Temple actually holds up really well. Specifically, I do like. I have a lot of problems with some of the puzzles, but I think the Mirror Shield puzzles really hit the mark. I think that's some of the best puzzle solving, dungeon crawling in that game. Water Temple, I mean, it whatever. We all hate it. It's fine. It's been done to death. Forest Temple is also pretty cool. I like that. I'm always down for like a hub and spoke thing where you go and like it's all things are like quartered off like that, and you go and you have to get the different pose, and you have like a main area, a main hub. That I'm always down for something like that. So I mean, there's a lot of good things to like, and obviously there's a reason why it's constantly the top 100 top all-time video games.
So if I get to say things real quick, so I referenced I've played 3.5 Zelda games. One of my very first Super Nintendo games was Link to the Past. One of my very first 64 games was Legend of Zelda, and then Majora's Mask. And I played half of Wind Waker until I just got so goddamn tired of it.
Was it the Triforce shards?
I didn't even get to that point, I don't think. I started exploring the map, and then I just got angry, and so I stopped. So I want to render my verdict. So there's been a lot of talk. What are the laurels that Ocarina of Time can rest on? Where does it fall short? And it is hard to say that it is the crown jewel, but I am going to rule more in favor with Kyle Gasman Harper, saying that some of the things done in Ocarina of Time, I think, truly have set some bars and modeled the way. Now, I know Breath of the Wild was a blockbuster game, and I have not played it because I don't own a Switch because I'm a pleb. But I do believe firmly, I mean, much like you said, Andrew, that it hits so many charts so many times. I think that if anyone hasn't played Ocarina of Time, they at least know of it, and can speak to its importance and how good it is. Like you said, let alone people just raging about the Water Temple. But I think as well, in the overall Zelda lore, I think that Ocarina of Time locked that in. And plus, I think in the really weird Zelda timeline map...
please, let's not talk about this all the
Well,
time.
no,
It
I
doesn't
think
exist.
it's
a hologram. It's a hologram. It doesn't exist.
Okay, well, in this
so
hologram,
stupid.
I think this is a linchpin in the whole thing that ties it all together. So whether you want to say it's canon or not, I think that is the real deal. So
Didn't they like wink wink say it was canon and spelled it all out, and then they released whatever game came out right after they spelled it all
It was,
out?
did shit all over it.
Just blew
Yeah,
it
it was.
all
It
to
was.
hell.
I think it was Link Between Worlds. It came out right after Skyward Sword.
I mean, it's
and,
fun to pretend.
Yeah, it just like to me that reads as the same as like all the Quentin Tarantino movies are all in the same universe. Like, oh God, shut up! Why does it matter?
Well, so I'm going to take us out. So this has been the Debate This podcast. Follow along with the argument on Twitter at DebateThisCast and let us know what you think. I'm Todd Thomas.
I'm Kyle Gasman Harper.
And I'm Andrew Kingfisher 9000. Kingfisher 9000 Henderson.
Saying thanks for debating with us, and if you disagree with our arguments and decisions, then we're challenging you to come fight us by the swing sets, nerds. And also, Kyle, you want to know why your name is Gasman?
Now I don't.
Because you got them farts all the time. They're all smelly farts. Smelly fart guy.
Kyle the fart man.
Whatever, I won. So
But yeah, come fight us at the swing sets, nerds.